Today on this warmish kind of summer day we are checking out those two here, the oldie but goldie and my main device for a couple of weeks here now, the Honor Magic 6 RSR versus the Sony Xperia 1 Mark 8, the newest flagship device from Sony. We want to check out which one of those is King Supreme. You see already here on spec sheet it is a triple lens setup on both here, and you can see the specifications a little bit more close here. We have a very large 1.4 inch size sensor on the Honor, but the sensor size with 1.56 inch on the Sony is no slouch either. It also has the ultra wide angle that has the same sensor size, actually probably is the same sensor even. And then we have this old but goldie sensor on the Sony that I think they use still from the 1 Mark 5 on. They use this sensor here. So 1.35 inch size sensor. Quite interesting to see that. But we want to start with the front-facing cameras. 3D face detection housed there on the Honor. And an oldie but goldie as well, the 12 megapixel sensor on the Sony. But yeah, let's check out the front-facing videos. Front-facing video now on both the Honor Magic 6 RSR that features autofocus here on its front-facing video, and the Sony Xperia 1 Mark 8 that sadly doesn't have this. Which one is better here in this lighting conditions? Using the internal mics on both, and both are not able to switch to the back-facing cameras, but I can zoom in a little bit 1x here on the Honor. So what do you think? Now the main camera sensor on both are roughly the same aperture, roughly the same sensor size, so it should be roughly the same in terms of like the quality here, but color science is definitely different here on both. So what do you think? Which one is working better here in this kind of situation with sun now coming sometimes from the front and with a little bit of shadows here in the back? Of course 4K 30 frames per second, I can switch between all camera lenses. So first on the Sony I can go to the ultra wide angle. Sony takes a while there. And the Honor can also do this. Honor has a very wide field of view here, I think 12 millimeters or 30 millimeters. So it's very wide in comparison to the much narrower one that we have there on the Sony. But the Sony has a much larger sensor than the Honor, and that can help in such situations with HDR, with noise and such things. So we are coming to the sun now, where the sun is like shining on my face. So which one is performing better here for the ultra wide angle? What do you think about both of them here? And we want to check out zoom performance, so we go to 2.6x here on the Honor, 2.9x there on the Sony. Actually, let's go on the Sony directly to 5.8 because it takes a while. And we go to 4 point something. Let's do 5.9 as well here. Let's go maximum 10x here, and here I think the maximum is a bit... It's like 10x as well now. The maximum is a bit further, it's like 17x. So let's try to zoom in with the Sony. This is like 17.5x there. Let's go back to the 10x here that we have. So which one is performing better? And yeah, zoom animations, I don't think I have to like show it to you. The other is already finished where the Sony is still stuttering. We start off with the photos, and yes, the Sony has a watermark there that I built by myself with a script that is just adding this watermark to all the images because Sony is not doing it themselves. Anyway, we start off with the macro capabilities. 70mm on the Sony with the tele sensor, and we have 68, which is roughly the same as 70 here, but we don't have such tele macro capabilities on the Honor. You can get very close with the shots and it's looking pretty good, but in comparison to the real macro, it doesn't have any chance. And even if I go 135mm here, so 2x crop, it gets even a little bit blurry there. Nope, no chance. The detail level on the Sony is much higher there, even though the contrast level is a bit brighter, a bit more pronounced and higher than on the Porsche Design Edition Magic. And when we go and ultra wide angle here, we check out and we see the color difference, but also the enormous field of view on the Honor in comparison to the Sony. Sony almost looks like a normal wide angle here. Much more nicer colors on the Sony though, in terms of like natural colors, where we have much more punchy colors, smartphone colors on the Honor. The Honor has a bit of problem with the sunshine there, the Sony as well, but I think the T-Star coating is helping a little bit there on the Sony side. Then of course when it comes to detail levels, yes, the Porsche doesn't have much of a chance against the Sony, though the Sony I think is a bit also over sharpening here and there. But yeah, the detail level here and the foliage and so on is much better there on the Sony in comparison to the Honor there for sure. But I wouldn't give it for the wide angle field of view to the Sony, because it's like way better on the Honor there when it comes to the more dramatic field of view. But otherwise, the Sony is a clear winner here for sure on this one. When it comes to 2x zoom on the main camera sensor, it's also a clear win for the Sony 47 versus 50 millimeters. Almost identical there. Color-wise, the Sony is winning there already. It's way too punchy, way too yellow. Weird colors on the Honor. I don't know what's going on. And if I zoom in, you can see how this like lacking complete detail there, where the Sony is way better. You have all the details there. It almost looks like a optical 2x zoom here. And look at the side here as well. There's like almost no detail in the fence there, where you can see there's a bit of detail on the Sony side. And the same goes for the foliage here, which is almost like a water painting there on the Honor. So that's for the Honor. And when the Honor is going to its 68 millimeter versus the 70 millimeter, keep in mind the Honor has a larger sensor here than the Sony. But again, in terms of colors, there's like a bit of more, see the color inconsistency between this here and this here. So this is a bit more warmer. This is a little bit more cooler. Now a bit more contrasty there on the Honor to fight probably the detail lag that we have there. A bit less sharp there. I think the detail levels there on the Sony are also a bit higher than on the Honor. The Honor looks a little bit like, yeah, artificial, sharpened up, artificial, not so natural as the Sony is looking. Look at the detail levels here, for example, compare it with here. It's a bit of lacking there on the Honor, and the Sony is doing much better also with the foliage here, where here's a bit like soft already and lacking details. So I'm surprised to see that, but the Sony is doing a better job at its telesensor. And when we go in and crop in even further, look at that, what's going on with the Honor. It's the same sensor. Why is the white balance so completely different? Where here it is just a crop in like it should be. And yes, color-wise, the Sony is winning already. Detail-wise, it's on par. There's not much of a difference. Even those little details there are looking almost identical between those two. We go a little bit down there. Wow, very hard to tell them apart, I have to say. And it's a compliment for the smaller sensor that we have on the Sony that is apparently really holding very nice with the larger sensor there on the Honor. So at this point, I would say basically identical. It's just that the Honor has so wrong colors that it's a win for the Sony. And then the more you crop in, this is the maximum now, 270 millimeter, actually 10x, and on the Sony it's 140 millimeter. Yeah, look at the detail levels. We don't have to talk about it. Now AI is kicking in on the Honor, and it's like helping there a little bit. This is where the Sony falls flat on its head and cannot compete anymore against the details that we get on the Honor there. Selfies, one last thing. What we can see here, the Honor is exposing for the face, so everything is a bit much brighter there, where the Sony is exposing overall, so a lot darker there. Then I think detail levels there is much better on the Honor, because it looks sharp on the Sony, but the Sony is just over sharpening the hell out of the image with the selfie cam to compensate probably for its lack of quality there. And yeah, bokeh looks nicer on the Sony, to be completely honest, with this little bokeh balls there. The only thing that the Sony really does good is the background there, because it's not over punching the green there to yellow almost. And looks a bit more pleasant than what the Honor is doing there. But the face is just way too over sharpened there. But you can tell me what you think about it, but I prefer the Honor there for that selfie shot. And yeah, this is it for the daylight shots. I'm quite surprised, but I think the Sony is clearly beating the Honor Magic 6 RSR in almost every discipline with every sensor, except maybe the front-facing camera. And let's talk about portraits. And it's clear as day that we have a clear winner here that you can find on the left. But first of all, let's talk a bit about the colors, because I think the Sony is doing something weird with the colors of my shirt. The Honor is doing it correctly because it's black. And here I see a bit of hint of blue, I think there. It's just a tiny bit too blue. If I have to do the
calibration of colors, I would make it a bit warmer. So maybe this is a bit too warm, this is a bit too cold, but that's the difference. And detail levels here, it's a night and day difference. Look at that. How nice the Sony looks like. Natural, not over sharpened, not redone my eyebrows. It's a bit soft, yes, but a normal camera would also be soft there. And the Honor, it's unsharp because of motion blur. I don't know what was going on there. Like, what is the ISO is 2000 and shutter speed is 1/50th of a second. It shouldn't be. This is also 1/30th of a second. Why looks my hair so weird there? And the rest is redrawn eyebrows, sharpen things up a little bit, yellowing my face. The Honor, I don't like the hardcore portrait style, the one that they use by default, the VIII one at all. The other one is even worse. This one is like, come on, this is like bad. Now let's go to the maximum, what the portrait allows us to do here, 140mm on the Sony and the Magic 635mm. Again, this bluish kind of look there on the Sony, which I don't like. Sharpness is taking a hit, for sure, so you really notice that it's like fighting against the pixelation and it's smoothing things out quite a bit, and it's not having AI that is rescuing it. But the Honor, it's just going overboard with AI. Now the hair is sharp somehow. Well, it looks like I'm coming straight out of Minecraft or something. So it's so blocky everywhere. Everything redrawn here, eyes redrawn, it's like tooth redrawn. It is, yes, you can still see that it's me, but it's looking like a drawing, not like a photo, where the Sony looks very soft for sure, but like a photo. And yeah, cutouts, forget about them here or here, but the Sony, because everything is a little bit more mushy and blurry, appears to be the winner here as well. So telezoom is a win for the Sony. Quite interesting, because we have a larger sensor on the Magic 6 RSR, but processing and not processing is what you see here. Probably the Magic 6 RSR without processing could beat the Sony. I don't know. Let's check out the main camera sensor. It is a bit closer up on the Magic 6 RSR, even though we're standing in the same position, because we have 54mm, because it's cropping in from 27mm 2 times instead of from 23mm or 24mm that we have on the Sony. Sony for 47mm. Again, the warmer, much yellower look on my face, which is not true, and the much cooler look on my face on the Sony, which is also not 100% true. But it's, I think, easier to warm up the Sony than to cool down the Honor. It also looks bad on the Honor. I forgot how bad the portraits are on the Honor. But the Sony looks natural, doesn't do so much over-processing, and yes, it's not the best, it's not the sharpest, not the cleanest, but it's looking good in comparison to what we see with the Honor. The cutouts are nice. I think what I like from the Honor is like it's getting like this gradual out of focus area, where here even like the smallest little hairs are inside, which is nice. And it's also trying to gradually get out of focus there, but it doesn't look so sophisticated as the Honor is doing it. But the Honor is like, because everything is like weirdly sharpened up, and that I prefer the Sony here. But you can tell me in the comment section which one of those you would prefer in terms of portraits. I think it's a clear win for the Sony.
Using the main camera now on the Sony Xperia 1 Mark 8. And also recording at 4K 24 frames per second. So we don't have a super night video here, but we can, in the normal video mode, switch to 24 frames per second. That should help a little bit with the light intake here. Standing now under the light, what do you think? Again, the internal mics used here. Which mics are sounding better here? Light now in the background. How well is it exposing my face? How good is the stabilization here on the Xperia 1 Mark 8? And it's using an older sensor, but it should be roughly the same age as the Honor. So what do you think? Which one is doing better here? Super night video now on the Honor Magic 6 RSR. It's recording at 4K 24 frames per second. I'm walking towards the light. I'm using internal mics as always. What do you think about this one here? And standing now under the light here, going away from the light in the background there. And yeah, let's see. Walking towards the dark. How well is this doing this super night video here on the other Magic 6 RSR.
We check out the night photos, and to my surprise, the Sony can keep definitely up with the Honor Magic 6 RSR, maybe even beating it. We have a larger ultra-wide angle, even though it's not so ultra-wide with 60mm. More pleasant colors actually on the Magic 6 RSR, but it's not realistic, and we have like this halo effect here. Yes, the Sony struggles a little bit as well, but not as much as the Honor. And on second glance, you see the Honor is quite greenish here. Might be from the greenery that it's taking this. I'm not so sure what's going on there. When you check out HDR, both very comparable. There's just a little bit warmer colors on the Honor, where Sony keeps it a little bit cooler. In terms of detail levels, very comparable again. I think because it is a bit of a narrow field of view, the Sony has naturally a little bit better details there, preservation. And yeah, this is seen throughout the picture, but they're basically comparable here with each other for the ultra-wide angle. But you see that a lot more details there on the Sony. So the larger sensor physics is working, even though the processing is not as high as on the Honor with a smaller sensor. Main camera sensor, quite interesting as well, because we still have the warmish kind of tone on the Magic 6 RSR that makes things a little bit weird, because this is a white lamp. They changed it to white and not this yellowish. Here it's a bit of overexposed, but the rest of, in terms of HDR, is almost comparable. It's just like this is white, this is more yellow, where white is more correct. This is more yellowish there, and I think the Honor captures the tone a little bit better here, where the Sony is a bit too whitish there. In terms of detail levels, again, I would say the Sony has a bit of an edge there, which is a bit of interesting. Yes, a bit of sharpened up as well, but look at this mushy things here on the Honor, where here we have a little bit of details in the bushes still. So yes, the Sony is beating the Honor also with the main camera sensor, which is quite interesting. And also, yeah, HDR there towards the sides and detail levels there as well. Yes, you can see a bit of over sharpening going on the Sony as well. But overall, I prefer the Sony there for the shot. Then we come to 70 versus 68mm, just like in daylight, very close together here, even though the Honor has a larger sensor. But its shutter speed could not keep up with the Sony. 1/15th of a second versus 1/9th of a second that we have on the Honor. And the Honor is a bit blurry, motion blur, where the Sony captured this nicely here. Also, I think the colors are correctly captured on the Sony. Then when we zoom in even further, this is 140 versus 135mm. Night scenery more, like if you compare it this year, it's a bit brighter maybe, but compared with this, the night scene is captured nicely on the Sony, because it is a dark sky there, where it's brightened up on the Honor, making look a bit of blue there. This means I can, in theory, read that there's something here. Here it's harder to read because it's pretty dark. The logos here in the background are nicer on the Sony, because the colors are all wrong on the Honor. And you see the distinguishing of the Aldi logo between yellow, orange and red is there, where here you cannot distinguish them. And also the easy fitness is more readable here than here. And then for some reason I was into 10 times the Sony's metadata. Maybe my script is wrong, because it's not coming from the Sony camera, it's mine. It's using still 140, but it's 240, I think it should be 200. I think it is 240, yes, 240 10x on both, basically. Again, shutter speed difference, but here 1/8 of a second, 1/9 of a second. Look at the difference here. I think both are fighting with the motion blur, but I think Sony is still doing a better job here, which is quite interesting and fascinating. So yes, Sony has the better zoom as well. Even if we go even further here, this is now the maximum for Sony, and I try to match it up a little bit there with the Honor. Nicer colors still, and the logo is more readable. So yes, it's an overall win for the main cameras. Ultra wide angle slightly bit better on the Sony, but it's the most comparable to the Honor at night. Main camera better on the Sony, and the telezoom better on the Sony. What about selfies? And this is what surprised me, because Sony did not upgrade the sensor, at least on paper it's just a 12 megapixel sensor, but maybe they did upgrade it because the performance is much better than on the previous generations. First of all, the Honor has this very smooth and soft kind of look that I like. This is why I gave him so much points in a selfie category, because it's not over processing everything and make everything look too weird. Sony, on the other hand, is over processing a little bit. I think it is over processing and over sharpened a little bit for sure. Like the eyebrows definitely redrawn, but it doesn't look too bad. If I make it a little bit softer looking, like, then it would be still fine. Also the bokeh balls there in the background, pretty comparable. I'm surprised. I still would give the Honor a slight edge, but I could understand if some people would say, hey, I want to have a sharper picture, so I can crop in a little bit, that they would choose, which one would you choose here? If you zoom out a little bit here, the Sony that looks very sharp, or the Honor that looks a bit softer and smoother. Yeah, choose your poison here. It's very, very hard. Technically, both are doing a fantastic job, I would say here. Ranking and conclusion, and TLDR, the Sony Xperia 1 Mark 8 gets 9.4 points, where the Honor Magic 6 RSR gets a score of 9.0. So we have a clear winner here, which is the 1 Mark 8. When we take a look at the detail levels, you can see where the 1 Mark 8 really scored higher than the Magic 6 RSR. First of all, main camera. Yes, I was a bit surprised, but even though the camera sensor is so old, technically I think they started with the 1 Mark 4 or 5 where they used this sensor. It's still performing very good, and I think the processing is very nice. It's beating the Magic 6 RSR, especially when it comes to the 2x crops, for example, that are much better on the Xperia. But also in general, I think it's very sharp, it's very good. The colors are very like, because they're very, very accurate there. The ultra-wide angle is a major win for the Sony Xperia 1 Mark 8 because they started already with the 1 Mark 7, put a very large 101.56 inch size sensor in there. So it is beating the Magic 6 RSR, even though the 6 RSR has a wider field of view of 30mm, the Xperia 1 Mark 8 with 60mm, more details, especially also at nighttime you get a little bit better results with the 1 Mark 8. So the larger sensor is helping there for sure, and you get definitely a picture that's on par with the one that we get on the main camera, very, very close at least to this one. Zoom performance was the Achilles first of the Xperia 1.5, 1.6, 1.7 and even the ones there before. But finally, Sony Xperia 1 Mark 8 gets a new zoom sensor there, and this zoom sensor is really beating the crap out of my voice. No, the crap out of almost everyone. I was quite surprised. Up to 10x, it can definitely compete against the Mate 80 Pro Max. I did some sample shots, one-to-one comparison. It's just using less AI, but the quality that I get of it with the detail levels is basically identical. If you zoom in even further, then it's an AI battle, and then Sony is not using AI, and then it's a win definitely for others. But for sure, when it comes also the 70mm up until the 240mm, it's top notch what you can get with the Sony Xperia 1 Mark 8 together, combined with the close focusing that you get. It's not as good as the predecessor that had a very, very close focusing, but you had to use manual focus. Here you have autofocus and get very close focusing. So the 1 Mark 8 is doing a splendid job here, beating the Magic 6 RSR that has even a larger sensor, doesn't offer such a good close focusing performance, and also at 70mm or 68 that they're using there. The comparison, it's a win for the 1 Mark 8 that just performs a little bit better with less processing. Then video recording. I really would like to go higher here. 9.3 versus 9.2 looks much closer than it actually is, because I like the 1 Mark 8's default video that comes out of the camera so good. It's not as over sharpened as the Magic 6 RSR if you use a default profile. Yes, Magic 6 RSR has a movie mode and classic LUT that looks very nice, but Sony Xperia has a pro video mode and has like the S-Cinetone that looks even nicer, I would say. So yes, the default video is very good. Even like the selfie recording performance I liked very much on the 1 Mark 8. Very detailed. I wouldn't even suggest this to be so good, or I never would have guessed, because the sensor, the selfie, is so old, but it's still competing very much, and whatever they did with it, maybe it's a newer revision of the sensor, it's the same sensor size and 12 megapixels, it's pretty damn good there. So video recording performance, I'm quite surprised. If Sony gets
an update and finally fixes the zoom in and out animations to make it a bit smoother here. It would even climb higher to 9.4. I'm pretty sure 4.7 would be possible. Even maybe 4.75 points would be possible because the colors are so good and accurate. And even if you switch from the main to the ultra wide, for example, it's basically identical in terms of colors. It's the most color accurate, I would say, that I saw so far. With this telezoom lens, you see a slight shift there, but it's still very, very accurate there. So for selfies and vlogging and such things, with the ultra wide angle and the main, you get a very good, very accurate colors kind of thing. Yes, I know the HDR was a bit weaker in comparison to the Magic 6 RSR, but this is because the default settings doesn't have the wide range option on the 1x8 turned on. If you turn this on, you get also the same HDR, even better HDR than on the Magic 6 RSR, which is quite fantastic, without the downside of red face issues that the Magic 6 RSR in harsh sunlight conditions can have. Portrait mode. Portrait mode is definitely 1x8. It's doing the least amount of processing, and for portraits, this is the best amount of processing you can do. It has a little bit like the bokeh mode for sure there, and sometimes the cutouts of the hair might be not as perfect as on others, but it's beating hands down the Magic 6 RSR. Whatever Honor was doing with the hardcore portrait style up to the Magic 8 Pro is just weak. The Magic 8 Pro finally has a little bit of better quality towards the portraits, but it's still also far away from what the Sony can give you in terms of portraits. So this is a clear win for the Sony here. Portraits just look phenomenal good on the 1x8, especially with the new telesensor there. Selfie cam, I was quite surprised and shocked that the very old sensor that I think needed replacement on the 1x8 can keep up. I'm not sure what they did there, because before I never had such good selfies on the 1x8 using the same sensor on the other previous 1x6, for example, or 1x5. Using the same sensor, at least on paper, it looks like the same sensor size and pixel count. So maybe it's a new sensor. I don't know what they did there, new revision, or it's the ISP and processing, because it's good. I mean, it is completely over sharpened for sure, but it's not so artificial looking as others there, like the Magic 6 RSR, especially at nighttime. It's like getting very soft. Some people might like the Magic 6 RSR approach there, and the 1x8 is getting a bit sharper there. Has a lot of sharpening for sure, tons of sharpening, but good HDR, and it's not looking too artificial. There will be other selfie comparisons coming for sure. Maybe I have to correct the score, but for now I was surprised that the sensor was doing so great, because from the 1x6 and 1x5 I had way worse experience with the selfie camera. Camera UI is a win for the Sony as well. It has the one-handed thing nailed down, so it is just like a normal camera. The camera UI is very not tuned for good looks, let's say it like this, but it's tuned for efficiency, and this is working fine. So far I also didn't have any issues. I know that people were reporting about camera freezes and stutters, and so I didn't have it. I don't like that if you're recording video at 60 frames per second, have the whole video stream cut or the camera app locked to 30 frames per second. I don't like that, but it's not a deal breaker as long as the video that comes out is good. I didn't have any crashes. On the contrary, on the Magic 6 RSR, sometimes crashes can appear if they appear, and then you have sometimes also lost photos that you took a photo and it's not saved in the gallery because the camera crashed. On the 1x8 I never had this issue. I had once that looked like it froze, so I switched the lenses and it didn't do anything for a split second, then it worked again. But that's the only issue that I had on my 1x8 so far, also when shooting here in outside, no overheating also. Camera wise, I think it's a little bit better than the Magic 6 RSR because of the one-handed use. It's a bit easier to find your settings there. Extra features, it is better. 1x8, why is it better there, and why is it getting so high in terms of points here, even beating the Vivos and so on? There are a few things here, and it's a very personal kind of thing. This is why I give them also very low kind of emphasis and weight. But it is a personal thing. I like micro SD cards. I like the ability to record on micro SD cards. pull the micro SD card very easily out of the Xperia, put it somewhere in to my laptop or my card reader, get all the video files quickly out of it without like trying to do some other way of plugging in a USB-C cable and try to figure out if MTP is working with this protocol that should have been long dead by now. But yeah, it's so much easier to do this. So this alone gives a lot of points here in terms of extra features. The other one is the headphone jack. It's so damn useful to have the headphone jack. You can just, even if you have a wireless mic, I have tons of wireless mics for sure, but even if your wireless mic is running empty, I have a old microphone. The quality is so good. Just plug it in, record, and it's good to go. You don't have to think about like charging batteries or such thing. It's good. It's at the same time you can even put your headphones in. You can just use normal headphones that have a microphone, and you can use this microphone as well, and it sounds good, and you can at the same time listen to your recording. So it is a feature that I really like that others should have. This is why I'm praising Sony so much. This is why Sony gets, in terms of extra features, most points here. Though I have to get some points off because I think they removed support for the vlogging handle. They still had it with the One Mark 6. I think on the One Mark 7 they removed it already. But their vlogging grip that is like possible to use also with cameras, the vlogging kit and vlogging monitor, is now not supported anymore. What the fuck is Sony doing there or thinking about there? This is like a feature where I have to get some points off if you compare it to the One Mark 6. But overall, yeah, the Sony Xperia 1 Mark 8 gets a solid 9.4. And where does it end up here in my camera list? You see it here, rank number 9. This is the first time, I think, in a long time that Sony manages to go in my top 10 of smartphone camera phones. And I'm a bit surprised, happy a bit, because yeah, I have a soft spot for Sony for sure, and the One Mark 8 really shines. It's really a solid device. It's not beating the X3, any Ultra phone there on this list. It's not beating it, but it's getting very close. Actually, it is beating the Vivo X100 Ultra. Can you see this? 9.3 and 9.4. Wow! I don't have the X100 Ultra anymore. I just sold it off. But if I would have the X100 Ultra, I would do a test against the One Mark 8 because this is super interesting. But you can see where are the differences. Definitely the X100 Ultra is better with the main camera sensor. 1-inch type sensor is beating it. But the ultra-wide angle will lose. The X100 Ultra has not a good ultra-wide angle, and the Sony definitely has one. Then it is definitely no competition when it comes to the zoom performance, because here I think the Vivo would also easily win. But now it becomes interesting. Video. Because video, the One Mark 8 has this ultra-wide angle, has this nice ultra-wide angle that you can use, where the X100 Ultra has difficulties with stabilization. Stabilization, especially at night time. Nighttime has other issues, like very strange. The Sony has other issues, very noisy, but Sony is very noisy, and if you move around it has this noise there. But what the X100 Ultra is doing, it gets smeary all over the place. It gets smeary, which I remember still last time I checked it out. So this is like video performance is a tiny bit better on the One Mark 8, believe it or not, even though zoom in and out animations on the 100 Ultra is better. Portraits are also better on the 100 Ultra, for sure. Selfie performance, however, is better on the One Mark 8, and I'm surprised to see that, but it is better. And remember, the X100 Ultra's the selfie was just trash. And yeah, we have to do another. What do I have here? X300 Pro. X300 Pro also don't have to do a comparison with, but I have the Mate 80 Pro Max. Maybe I can do a comparison with the Mate 80 Pro Max. You can see they get basically a 9.4, same points basically, though in different areas. As you see here, ultra wide angle, for example, is one thing where expect high stuff. Here will be interesting to see video. yeah, you can write down in the comments which phone should I compare the Xperia 1 Mark 8 to, because yeah, I could also try the 17 Ultra or Pure 80 Ultra or Oppo Find X9 Ultra or the X300 Ultra, for example. Might be interesting because the ultra wide angle versus ultra wide angle. Maybe I only compare the ultra wide angles there. I don't think that the Xperia 1 Mark 8 can compete against the Ultras here, even though it's priced same as the Ultras. But it's a very solid phone here for photography and videography now. And yeah, I'm surprised to see it there. After seeing the results, not so much anymore. Anyway, I will do some other comparisons as well. You can put down in the comments below which phone should I compare to the 1 Mark 8. And that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Until the next time.